Hi, and welcome to TwoQuestions.tv. I'm your host, Susan Baroncini-Moe. Today is Wednesday, and I'm answering my own questions. Well, one of them's mine. And it's inspired by a question that was sent in by a viewer. And I know I said I was going to answer those on Fridays. But here's the thing. This question was so interesting and exciting to me, it inspired me to come up with one of my own and pair them together for an episode of TwoQuestions.tv. So today's episode is all about how to get more out of what you read. So question number one is, how do you get more out of everything that you read, all the books that you read? You may have noticed I interview a lot of authors, and when publicity firms or publishers send me books to review, or even when I request books to review, they send me the book along with one of these info sheets, and it has multiple pages and information about the author, information about the book. It even often has questions that I could ask during my interview. And that's great. It's nice for the author, speaking as an author, it's nice for the author because the author kind of knows what's coming and has pat answers for those questions. And that's really great when you're doing like a round of radio station talk shows. And that certainly is something I did when my book came out. But as an interviewer, as an author, I remember how I felt when I would go to those radio shows and I could tell they hadn't read my book. They probably hadn't even seen it. And they were really just pulling questions off the pat list. And I always wanted to be challenged a little bit. It gets a little boring after a while to be asked the same questions over and over again. So, and I really wanted people to read my book. So I decided when I did this show and any other show I've done that I was going to read the whole book. So that's what I do. I read every book that, the authors that I interview, I read everything. And the way that I get the most out of those books is whenever I can, I take my time. I am a fast reader by nature, but if it's a really good book, I really do like to spend time with it and enjoy it and really take my time absorbing it. I like to have a quiet space. I tend toward ADHD, so it's really good for me to have a quiet space in which to read. Otherwise, I read the same sentence over and over and over and over. You've probably done that. In general, I find the act of reading a tangible book much preferable to an ebook. I have a massive ebook library and I do read ebooks, but I really prefer the written page, like the page. I prefer the experience of having a book in my hands, turning the pages, and in part because I grew up on that, and I still love the tangible feel of a book. There's something really special about that for me. But my memory works in a certain way. If you know me, you know I have a terrible memory. But one thing that I do remember is the way things look. And that helps me to remember the content. So for example, I remember a book cover, and I take a lot of notes in books. You can probably see there, I take a lot of notes. I am known for underlining and putting asterisks, and I dog ear pages. Unless it's a library book, I don't defile library books. But I like to, kind of highlight things that are important to me. I take notes in margins. I do all kinds of stuff. And that helps me to recall the book content, because I remember what my notes look like, which helps me to remember the content of the notes, and then it helps me to remember the book. So another thing that I do is I have a ton of these little notebooks, and man, if you ever want to give me a gift, you just send me notebooks. These are my favorite thing, because one of the things I do is I keep a notebook by my side most of the time. And so I keep, notes like this, on books. I keep notes for ideas that I've had. I have a whole system for tracking blog post ideas, show ideas, just great things that I've read, quotes that I want to remember. And that really helps me because the act of putting pen to paper and taking notes seems to help activate a part of my brain in a way that just, I hope I remember that, doesn't. So notebook really is a big deal for me. I am a very big fan of going back and reviewing books and my notes and just kind of flipping through to see what did I find so great about that book? What was so important about that book? Those things really help me. But the thing that really helps me to integrate a book's knowledge into my own wisdom is talking about it with peers, colleagues, clients, and friends. So I'm known to be a big recommender of books. I really like to, share what I've been learning, what I've been reading. It's not uncommon for people who know me to hear me go, "Oh, I just read this great book. You have to hear about it." I have had several conversations like that already just today. So really thinking about, sharing it in ways that I can, sort of incorporate the book into my daily life, the knowledge that I've gained, that really helps me to integrate the knowledge of a book. So that's how I get the most out of a book and how I get the most out of everything I read. Now, the viewer question was, what do you read the most? And what do you wish you read more of? And that's a wonderful question for me, because the books I read the most are, really for this show and for my work. And those are things like business, marketing, networking, sales, advertising, personal development, wellness, health and well-being, financial fitness, those kinds of non-fiction-y books that are really beneficial in general to having a better life and being more successful. And I love reading that kind of book. And I always wish I had even more time to devote to reading books like this, because it is one of my favorite things, just, filling my head with that knowledge. I love it. But if I had even more time to read, I would definitely read more fiction. I used to read a lot of fiction. Growing up, that was almost all I read. And I love fiction, especially beautifully written fiction. I'm not a big fan of books, or movies that make me cry, because I'm not a big fan of crying in general. And so I generally avoid like all those, like emotional things. I'm not a big fan of that. One of my favorite books is Outlander and that whole series by Diana Gabaldon, but I haven't watched the show because I don't want it to ruin it for me. I know people say it's amazing, but I don't really want to watch it. But one book that has been pulling at me lately is a book I've read many times over since high school. So for a very long time. And it's called Stranger in a Strange Land. And this is my copy. You can see it's all bent and, it's really old. Like, this is one of my favorite books as well. Highly recommend Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert Heinlein. It's a really fun book in some ways, and a really thought-provoking book in other ways. I just really enjoy it. So I've been trying to carve out some time so I could spend some time with a stranger in a strange land. And I feel like that's going to happen soon. But yeah, that would be the thing I would read more of, is fiction, all types of fiction, except the ones that make me cry. I'm generally not a big fan of historical fiction except Outlander, but yeah, I would read a lot more fiction if I could. So that's my answer to the viewer question. Thank you very much for asking it. If you enjoyed this episode and you found it helpful or useful in some way, give me a thumbs up, and please click subscribe for more interviews with authors and experts and interesting people. And, also these kinds of behind the scenes or, Susan Talks About Stuff episodes. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.